Happy New Year, everyone. Joyeux Nouvelle Année. Good to greet you all in the new year. I hope things are going well so far and wish that they will continue to go well for you. But here we are in winter, and I wanted to try some more summery type skies, cumulus clouds, that kind of thing. We did the more of a sunset, sunrise kind of thing last week. I thought we'd do this. Hi, Carol. First, I want to talk a little bit about cloud structure. You can see in this why I whipped out my phone to shoot that. It's kind of an odd composition down here, but look at that lovely Z just going through there. And then these come down. And so I think this needs a little more going on to make a composition. But looking another direction, you can sort of see there's some diagonalness to it. Here, same thing. Here, going the other direction. Here, it's almost the points. And the thing that we look for here winter, almost like vanishing points, railroad track perspective, just like the tiling in the field here, but on a slightly different angle. Again, same thing, a little different cloud, different time of day. Actually, it may be, I don't know, no, that's not same year, couldn't be. Anyhow, you will notice that these things, if they're doing that railroad track perspective, that means in actuality that they are kind of running parallel to each other. It's just that looking through the distance, they appear that way to us. And clouds do form what they call streets. And in these streets are a series of sort of egg-shaped shells of convection, things rising. Let's see, yeah, here, very humid day. It's a cell, egg-shaped cell, which is warm air is rising, cold air is dropping, and look for that. And that will keep you from doing that, just sort of plunking them on there, the pepperoni on a pizza, or, Simpson clouds in the opening credits of the Simpsons show. So this will give you a more dramatic, it helps you make the sky more of a subject. So when we're doing clouds, we've been, all along the last few sessions, we've been talking a lot about the consistency of the paper, the consistency of the paint and the condition of the paper, and when you apply the paint to get the effect that you want. So that is going to be very paramount here, because maybe with last week we sort of kind of got something in everywhere, and then we applied things on top at the right time. With cumulus clouds, we could very well, or these, I don't know the names for all of them. That's definitely a cumulus. We want to pick, say, for the area for the sky, or the area for the white of the cloud, or the area for the dark of the cloud. We're going to want to have possibly very different, hi Jan, very different paper conditions to get the look we want. So we may actually be working a little more variety than before. I kind of like this as a composition. It's a lot of this. I probably was squatting down when I shot this. That's not that steep of a hill. So the only drawing that will be involved here is you know, it's the sky, I want it to be about the sky, so I want a little more sky. So I'm going to just put in my horizon line is going to be roughly there. No, maybe not. That's almost vertical, isn't it? Doggone it. Okay. A little bit of the ditch, some corn, a sign, utility poles. Those are the kind of things that I'll probably paint on later. And I do like this mess of bush coming down and going into the ditch and creating a shadow and coming over and then going across. So I may lengthen that a bit. Again, I really don't always like to draw my shadows. I like to paint them. So there's going to be very, very little drawing. It's what I'm doing here is I'm more or less making marks to show me where things start and stop. Up here, it's going to be a different situation. I am going to want to look at that and maybe, let's see, do we want to use one of these other skies? It'd be kind of neat to use this one because I think I mentioned it last week. The axis here or through this one is very similar to the axis here, except we're a little more straight. Well, no, doggone it. Yeah, I'm looking a little more. This is looking due north. In this one, I'm looking north, slightly northeast. So, yeah, I think we're going to go with that. So, another thing we need to talk about. We're going to use blues. We're going to use, you notice I've left the palette rather gunky because there are wonderful grays in there that will make, probably I could almost go into some of this and get a very credible or add just a little bit of something to it and get a very credible cloud bottom. So what we want to look for is what is the difference in the blue as we're looking higher up into the zenith of the sky, middle of the sky, horizon. As here we have a definite cobalt, cerulean to a little maybe turquoise to kind of a duck's egg, a little bit of gray-green in it. Hi, Jeff. Then the cloud, for simplicity's sake, I like to say top, bottom, front, back. Sky is top to bottom. You may actually, in a horizontal image, you may need to look and register a color change. Here we go again, the different blues. You may need to register a color change right to left as well if you're doing a very horizontal. Yeah, look at all this is a more violet, that's a more blue. So look for those things when you're out. Looking at clouds, which I've spent probably way too much time doing. So, top of the clouds, that's usually the whites. Later in the day, maybe you look a little more at the sides. White, creamy white, almost a tinge of pink as the whites go back in space. Violet gray, blue, as we go from bottoms of these clouds are basically, it's the same item. You can almost see 1 cell, 2 cell, 3 cell. If we were to go further out there and look under this one, it would look like that, and then that one would look like this, and this one would look like that. So look for those color changes. This is what's going to make, in the sky, in the cloud tops, in the cloud base, and that's what's going to make your skies look authentic and dramatic and believable. So pick your blues, delegate them. If you can, you might use a different blue in your sky than if you mix a bluish gray, use a different blue for that. One thing I would caution you against very strongly, do not use Prussian blue or phthalo blue above the horizon line, because it is a powerful, assertive color. It's hard to mix. It just, I don't know, whenever I come into a room full of paintings, and I see that Windex blue, phthalo blue sky that a lot of people will use, immediately I think that's not a very experienced painter. It just try to, and don't use rip roaring. You know, you can take it down a bit. That's why I'm allowing this all this palette gunk down here. I'm going to be mixing colors right on top of that and right into that, and it will help these. You know, if it's not high chroma, it will help the sky stay back, and maybe you can bring your ground forward. So, when do we get the paper wet? And hi, Helen, oh my goodness. When do we get the paper wet and apply paint after that, or when do we work it dry? That's where we look at the character of our edges. If the character of say the tops of the clouds in this instance, is a pretty crisp edge, then you might want to work this down to that stop there. But here we have some very soft edges. So you might work, in that instance, you might work that area. You might apply water some places, but not over the entire sheet, like kind of like what we did last week. So for brushes, I'm going to use, basically you need two brushes for this. You need a big brush that will carry a lot of water, you know, something in this range. And you need a brush that is slightly stiffer and carries less paint. So I'm going to maybe go to the Orientals on that. There's size-wise, there's not a lot of difference here. Well, that one, yeah. But paint capacity, this is a finer hair. It's going to carry a lot more water. So I want to be very, very careful how much water I'm bringing to these situations when I put new paint on an already wet surface. So the easiest thing to do is just do some, I think. Let me get these all put up here. This is big enough. This is a number 14 or 16-ish mop. Now, here you have much softer edges in this situation than that situation. Hard edges and, well, yeah, a lot of hard edges and some soft edges. A lot of hard edges, but very soft down here. So we're going to be working, or you would be working, two different paper conditions. Again here, oops. Again, very kind of hardish edges. So good. This will be a change from what we were doing last week. So I'm dipping the brush in dirty-ish water, the rinse water, in that we can even get some of this gunk here with a lot of water. I'm going to try to be good about remembering to bring the camera back up where it should be. So, where I want to work wet is going to be a little bit here, a lot there, and pretty much in here. So, Now, this is, since it's slightly dirty water, I think we'll be able to see it, I think, a little better. Now, don't worry about the bush. That's going to be darker anyway. Take it right down to the horizon. That area needs to be fairly damp. Now, let's get our blue. Let's go with cerulean. This is going to be a little slower moving. And we're going to bring that in from the top. Now, notice I'm painting a lot on the side of the brush. So I'm stopping to get my whites. Let's put a little turquoise in that to get a slightly greener blue for the area over here. But I'm going to bring that right to where I have painted so that that edge is softer. So the bottoms of the clouds, and typically bottoms of clouds will be softer than tops, but not always, because you just got to look for what you have. More cerulean. While that's wet, let's get a little bit of that up in here and let that transition down to there. Let's get a more of our turquoise, our slower moving turquoise, and pick up where that edge is. You know, and you can't copy, and let's get more turquoisey yet. Maybe even put a little, oops, wrong color, John, rinse, blot. Maybe even put a wee bit of yellow ochre in it. So as long as, and I'm letting it touch, again, the bottoms here, because I want the bottoms, the edges, the bottoms of the clouds to be softer. And further away, they'll be softer as well. So I'm going to put actually a little bit of some leftover white in that to get this very, very pale business back over here. Take that right down to the horizon. I may paint something over it. Don't worry about getting into your corn or whatever. Jackie, hello. Now, this is still a little bit damp, so I'm going to get into this and put a little bit of alizarin or some sort of reddish thing into it to get a grayish, reddish gray. And if it's been too long since you've been there, and it looks like I have, so what do? Rinse. Blot a little bit, bring some water to the edge. See, I'm not getting that up here, but I would like to have had that here. So, into that, I'm bringing up a little bit of that blue, because I'm getting a little bluer, blue-gray, so get some dirt in my blue. Side of the brush, try to stay off the point. Listen to on point. Don't paint on it so much. It's a radio show I like. So I'm starting to get some darker. Now notice I'm going to be using stiffer paint because water is here. So I have to be careful with that. I have to get a little bit, let's get some ultramarine. Slower moving, a little bit of Quin Rose or alizarin, kind of purplish. Gonna wait, that's awful wet, I can see it glisten. So, going into the bluer section of the cloud. And again, here's what I mean by delegating your blues if you can. I used cerulean and turquoise, cobalt turquoise, for the open sky, and I'm using ultramarine when I'm doing cloud bases. So that will help them stay away from each other as you paint. A little more ultramarine in that as we go back. Maybe even a little lavender. Why not? Right, I mean, let's just see, that's moving slowly. That's moving slowly. And this area is slightly damp. And I may even need to wait. Yep. Now, just like the railroad ties, we talked about sort of like a railroad track situation with the clouds. The ties appear to be closer to one another. And it's the same thing with the bases of these clouds. They look wider here, and then a little narrower, and narrower and narrower, and they get closer together. So if you put that in there like that, it will look more authentic, rather than having them all about the same size and evenly distributed, and just never works good. Now here I shouldn't be touching that. I shouldn't be touching it because it's too damp. I can put my head over here and I can see it glisten. And I think I'm going to work some stiff lavender into this area here because it's damp. And I want a very soft blend, but I want a color change. So it's getting a little drier over here, so I can put in some small clouds that are breaking off on their own. I call them piffers. I like to make up words. Okay, I think I'm getting close here. I just need to come down to the horizon here. So I'm going to get a little more of that turquoise and some of that white. And I know they say you're not supposed to use white. But if you mix it into your color, it is a color. And it is. You're not correcting something that didn't go right on the first pass. You're making something the way you want it. And that's a big difference. Take that right down to the road. Okay. If you come to a situation like that, that's gone a little bit. Well, hi, Eileen. Sometimes it's best to live with that, but it would be nice to have a soft, broken bit there, because we are looking underneath it, so we're going to see a base. So I'm just going to touch that in with a notice the brush is kind of dry. There's not a lot of water in it. I just have got the whatever's there on the palette. And one thing that will some folks will be tripped up on is they will have a tendency, let's get a little darker bit, get into the bottom of this. And get softer, and they'll rinse the brush as like I just did now. They won't blot it. They'll come in here and they will get the next color and start mixing. And what's happening there is you are bringing more water into the mix. And if you go into a section here that's wet, you're going to get some blossoms. So I'm just going to get one last little purplish grayish. Let's get some lavender. And get some of these little floatery, piffery. This is the time to get on the point when you're going to do something tiny like that. Okay, and if it looks too hard, and I think it does in this one spot, I'm rinsing, I'm squeezing it off, and I'm bringing water to the edge of it so that it can swim in and soften. So I think we talked about that last week. There's a difference between bringing water to something and just letting them sort of kiss so that the paint that's already there can swim into the wet area, as opposed to, that's the paint moving itself, or the water moving the paint, as opposed to you getting in there and physically blending it as if it were a oil or an acrylic or something like that. Now here, I've got a devilishly straight line, and it doesn't look quite right, and I think it's going to be tough to soften that up. I might try that later, and if I can't do it, what I'll do maybe is put a darker little floater cloud on top, or we may not even notice it once we get this other stuff in. So that's the idea. Difference in the character of the blue as we go from the zenith to the horizon. Difference in the character of the gray as we go back in space. Difference in size. Difference in the character of the edge. Bottom of the cloud versus top of the cloud. Hard, crisp edge. See this portion of the paper here where it's white. No water ever touched that. The water only got up to about there. So here we are. We're working different areas of the paper in different conditions, and then bringing a consistency of paint that is appropriate. If there's moisture already there, don't bring runny paint. Bring slower moving paint, maybe even thick paint right out of the pocket there. So now let's go to what we're going to do as a subject. This guy. I think I'm safe enough there drying. So I'm just going to take a second to let that dry a little bit and talk about, say, these. Now here, in a way, the bottoms are harder than the tops. So just look for that difference. And also look for the character of the clouds for that time of day and that time of year. As it gets colder, clouds that started out like this will begin to, you see this very midday, a little later in the day, they start to shrink. These big fluffy cumulus things start to shrink. And this is kind of afternoon, later in the afternoon, they're not as big and puffy. You rarely see this time of day, sunset or sunrise, big puffy cumulus clouds, at least not in the Middle West. You can get anything anytime, but if you make that mistake and you have big puffy cumulus clouds at sunset, just pop some palm trees or something in there. That would be more appropriate to Hawaii or Mexico or something like that. Okay, here we are. I need a green, but I need a green that varies as it comes forward. This looks like probably September or something. Yeah, September 5. corn is just starting to turn. So I'm going to execute that bit first, but I believe I'm going to go to a slightly stiffer brush. By the way, I was being very careful with this brush with regards to the amount of moisture on it when I came back into areas that were wet. Another way you can keep from creating problems is use a brush that carries a little less paint to do that. I mean, a little less water, and, you know, so that it might be a little easier to control. All right, I need a yellow ochre right into the mess. Boy, I let that get dry. I was using another palette, so this one's getting... Let's get a little burnt sienna in there too. Probably should get a little less paint on that so that the edge of it, well, top edge I'm going to make sort of like ochre-ish. Bottom edge I'm going to get a little greener. So let's get some Prussian right into that and some dirt. I don't want it to be too brilliant a green. Now a little stronger yellow into that for the closer edge of the let's get a little more of the yellow where it hits the road there. Similar stuff, I'll put some burnt sienna in it. I don't want to get into my greens at the back edge of the painting. I need to save the more vivid greens for the foreground here. Oops, that's some extra tape there. I'm going to start putting some more vivid color into this to make a more vivid green. So turquoise makes a very vivid green, even with just yellow ochre. So this is a little bit more vivid. Oh, that's the sienna. Well, that's good. Let's see. Don't worry if I get into this darker area here. Well, stronger, John, stronger. A good natural looking green is a bright yellow and neutral tint or black. It is surprisingly, or something like Payne's gray. It makes a surprisingly vivid but not garish green. So I'm painting through the shaded areas. Gonna splatter just a bit to get some foliagey colors. As I come forward, I'm going to modify it a bit. So there's maybe perhaps a bit of difference between the bush and what's around it. Even in September, we still got that relentless chlorophyll situation. For some more vividness, I'm going to get into some more turquoise. some sort of little flower there, probably multiflora rose. Try to leave some whites. And this is almost, it's cornflowers, or what do you call it? Chicory. Ah, jeez. I should have put a little bit of, well, there's a, oops, I'm sorry. I'll talk about it. Prussian into this, and I'm keeping that Prussian below the horizon line. Prussian, and let's get like a gamboge or Indian yellow or something, and well, let's get a little bit of that looks too garish, so a little bit of the neutral tint there. I need a sagey kind of color, so I'm going to get some creamy cerulean and maybe a bit of yellow ochre. And more water, so this is actually going to be a runny mix. To get the cornflower, chicory, whatever it is. Leave little white bits behind. Okay. Now I'm going to deal with the road. Well, no. Well, yeah. Options. That's what's beautiful about this medium. You have so many options. There's no perfect right way to do it. Let's just variegate our greens. I've got a Nicolazzo yellow that is just a little too. Bring that down with some red, some quinacridone rose maybe. Boy. Just like we were doing up here, I'm going to touch into areas to get some variety in the green. That's too much variety. Smear it. Where let's get some burnt sienna into some of that. You can see that's slower moving. It's not. I'm going to blot some of the paint off the brush. Yeah. See how the tip is splayed? Hopefully this will help me get a more organic looking stroke there on the corn. And that edge is now a little bit wet. So I'm going to get some ultramarine, mix into that. Maybe a little bit of red to get a dirty purple. And at the bottommost edge of that, okay, maybe we'll even touch some of that in here. Splattered even. Be sure to point the brush that way so we don't, and it did come up there. We got a lot of birds now. Oh boy. Well, I'm going to try and distract us with a utility pole. Got to be careful with that, John. They're very small and they're going to dry. I think we won't even see them. So what I'm doing now is I'm beginning to work in these shadows, and another way we could do this is we could moisten that area with just water and then put some of that right into it. To get a different edge character. Alrighty. Let's do our big shadow. Well, before we do that, let's get our road going. Down here in the gunk, I've got a greenish, very pale gray, and I need a more, the way it looks in the photo, a more reddish very, very, very light, very, very dull purple. That way, that I don't want the road to be as light as anything in the clouds. So I want the whites to really stand out on those illuminated portions of the cloud there, because that's our, kind of, in a way, our focal point or our subject. Now, into that, I'm going to get a little bit of this nondescript warmer gray. Hello, Shelley. And this is going to be a little bit damp up there, so if I come in like so, I can get a soft looks like the maintainer had recently come by. Now this side I'm going to put a little bit of burnt sienna into that, very little bit, as I come forward here, and a bit more maybe. And also I want to take some burnt umber or something like that, burnt sienna. Sort of an army green there, and I want to come right along this edge while it's moist, or while it's still a little bit damp, and get that little warm color that it always makes the grass look, well, even get into some yellow ochre. Oh, that's not yellow ochre, John. Gee whiz. To me, I think maybe the grass is not quite as healthy there, and that's why it looks like that. Now I need some, should cover that up. Bluer, bluer. There we go. Really doing a lot of the things that we did do in the clouds. Get some of the nondescript green and bring it out here and make those little bits of grass that, well, let's see, that's a little too damp, so we're going to have to wait on that, aren't we? It's amazing how that stuff can live. Now this is not so, yeah, see, I touch it and it comes up. Oh, that means I could flick clear water at it and get some gravel. It might even show. Okay, now I think we can start working into this this area in here. Slow moving paint now, so I'm going for my darker blues like Prussian, ultramarine, yellow ochre. I'm wanting darker green, so that means a little bit of red in there. This is dry brushing. You can see the, hello, Cindy. Maybe I'll even splatter a bit here. I want some texture for that cornflowers. Using the side of the brush, not the point. And then a little more red in there, a little more blue into certain areas that I've dampened by doing that, and create some, trying to get, oops, this stuff. That look. Better if I bring it down here, I think. Ultramarine, Quinn Rose, a little bit of muddy water. Make larger marks closer to you, smaller marks closer together, further away. This really isn't going to look like anything until we get that big, deep shadow in there. This area will hopefully then put just a bit of that in over here. Okay, how about we go to our shadow proper? I am going to go to Prussian blue. A little bit of that Quinn Rose. So this is a kind of a purple. A blue violet with some dirt from below. And now, oddly enough, even though this looks, it's looking greenish, well, because it's going over a green, but it looks purplish, so I can go more purplish still on the palette. Big, be bold, John, be bold. Okay. If you see a little thing come up like that, leave it. It looks like foliage, or it can. Push against the point of the brush, work on its side, and the undersides of this little, whatever it is, I think it's a multiflora rose. Let's get more purpley. Now that here looks royal purple. But as I stick it on here, it looks like a very dark green. Let me get, as I'm coming away from the thing, this is very deep shadow. That's still deep, not quite as deep. I'm going to put a little bit of cerulean blue in it. Rinse, blot, a little more cerulean blue. Coming out to where I get to the road, but because the road is a different substance, gravel, than grass, I cannot use the same color. Put a little bit of that blue down in here to... Not up there, not up there. As I go out onto the gravel, I have to make it a different color. So let's take some of that over here and put some burnt sienna in it and a little more water. When a shadow goes on to a new surface, cast shadow, it will usually change in color. It may change, it will always change in color. It may change in value as well. Grass is darker than limestone gravel. So this shadow should not be as dark as that shadow. Let's have some minor shadows coming out of here too. Also, don't space your shadows evenly. You can create the illusion of space by having irregular spacings. I'm going to smuggle some of that in over here for, I don't know why. Okay. There's going to be a utility pole. I don't know if you can see that. Hello, Diane. Take your brush, squeeze it out, and get a, like that. Then touch into your paint. And you've got a sort of a chisel edge. And you can of course they get closer together. Should I put one in there? I don't think so. Now, that also allows me to get some of this and create a shadow on the road. Let's darken that up. Okay. In here, I still want to do some more work. Oops. Strong blue. Slow moving. Rich purple. Bottommost places of these, I'm going to circle, or surround, not circle, try and surround some of those little white dots that I left, or little skips in the paper, to maybe hopefully create some of our multiflora roses. So they'll pop out by virtue of having more. It'll be a hard contrast, that white to this very, very, very dark. I like that color. Oh boy, I like purple. Purple and turquoise. Two of my favorite colors. It shows pretty dark in here. Even down here a little bit. I want to leave some of that green behind to be the leaves of the multiflora rose. And when that gets to the right state, you could even take your fingernail or a tool and pull out some leaves. Now, I always mention that the way you do that is you wait until the glisten has more or less gone off the paper, or just when it goes off. And then you can get, the water is below the surface of the paint. The paint is on top of the paper and it's not yet dry, so you can move the paint. You wait a second longer, the paint will have dried too much. If you come in a little too early, there'll be too much water on the top and it can rush back in and fill the area that you scraped out. I can also create some appearance of taller things by linear work. Let's see, I don't want that dark a. Put a little yellow in it to get something greenish. I'm going to get this. That's too dark. Rinse. Blot. Yellow. Slow moving. Lighter. Don't like that hard edge, so I'm bringing a damp brush to the top of it to let the paint swim into it. I'm going to put some, while that's damp, I'm going to put a little bit of a bluer, darker green, sort of hopefully transition towards this area here. And I still need some strong little darks in there. And then I also need, and we're just about done actually, I probably need to make my gravel be a little better. Get some of this brownish green and see if we create some more of our grass that just won't die. Okay, now let's finesse our road a bit. You know, that utility pole needs to be just a titch stronger. So I am going to get a small brush and some burn umber. And it's dry, so I can use my pinky finger as a maul stick There we go. I don't think this is a good candidate for utility lines. I think, well, let's have that caution sign coming up here. So I'm getting a kind of a school bus yellow, the gamboge, or whatever it is. Be nice to have somebody walking their dog up there, I think. That'd be kind of fun. I want some of these nearby grasses, the little scruffy grasses. That's what I want to say, scruffy. These here. Be a bit darker. Maybe even pull up some. I'm going to eliminate I'm going to tint these little whites down here because I don't think there would be any. Cornflowers have folded up. That needs to be tinted. That needs to be tinted. That. So we keep it on their multiflora. There's always a bunch of vine and stuff in these things too. So, yeah, I'm just painting away, having fun. Which, by golly, that's why we do it. But I hope that I got across the idea. Hi, Carlos. How are you doing, man? Now, Carlos, this is your kind of subject matter, man. He does roads like nobody does roads. Okay, let's detape and see what we got. Oh, John, jeez. Okay, good thing I got extra tape on hand here. I need to just finish off with some scruffy dry brushing, rinse, blot, burn umber, a little bit of that. See how it like leaves a footprint. Well, thank you, Shelley. Well, yeah, we imported a new sky. Light touch. See, the brush is very dry there. Take that right out to the edge here. There we go. That's more what I wanted. Okay. We could maybe smuggle a little more yellow-ishness. Oh, sorry about the bumping my head there. On the front edge of the corn there to bring that forward a little bit. Maybe a little bit of that up in here. There we go. Now we'll detape. Come on. But I was just about to say that if you get a painting like this, Debbie, how are you doing? That where white is an important element, that when you go to matte it, use an off-white or cream-colored matte so that it, don't use a stark white matte. Because that will, it will compete with the whites of the clouds. So Thank you, Carol. You're always so kind. So it stays up there. You can look at it. And yeah, I think, maybe I'd look at it for a while and so, oh dear. Well, don't grow up. Just paint like, I can see a couple places that looks like it might want some reinforcement. But I would try to be, oh, you're very welcome, Eileen. But okay, just to review what we were talking about, look at your clouds. Well, look at your sky first. Oh, thank you, Corey. Notice the change in the blue. Thank you, Jan. As you go from zenith to horizon, or even from one sky to the other, particularly at sunrise or sunset. So get those different blues, delegate them if you can. See if you can not use the same blue to mix your base colors as this. That's not critical. What is critical, do not use Prussian or phthalo in the skies. It's too much. Keep it below the horizon. Then, when you look at your clouds, close ones to middle ones to far away ones, is there a change in the color of the base? So here it's kind of a gray-violet. Here it's a blue-gray, more like more blue, but still not as blue as the sky. Get that difference. Note the streets. If you can find a zigzag like that, wow, that's great. But usually there'll be some diagonal. Don't, particularly cumulus. Look for a pattern or a shape. Look for those streets. Look for the size of the cell. Always remember that you're going to see more base close to you, less base, middle distance, least base, far away. Here we're nothing. Well, that's shaded, but that looks thick. But these clouds are shading that. So there, you notice it's a very thin base there. This is a little wider. That's wider still. CV. The whites. Going from a white to a warmer white to a creamy or maybe even a reddish white. And that will happen. That change will happen more as we go later in the day. You'll really get a big change. See, you're a little later in the day that's getting creamy and even orangey and lovely. See, midday, boom, boom. That's just pretty much white and white. Midday, white and gray. So look for the edge character. Tops are soft, bottoms are hard. Here it's tops are hard, bottoms are soft. Very much here. A little bit of both. Watch out that the time of day, the cumulus clouds, big and puffy midday. As the air starts to cool, they shrink a little bit. And when it gets really late or it's winter or something like that, they're really kind of flat sort of thing. And then make a decision do I want to work the whole sheet with some water on it and wait till the appropriate time or bring in the appropriate consistency of paint? Or do I want to work certain areas? In this instance, say this instance, maybe not that instance, you would probably get these areas kind of damp, bring in the base colors, paint that in later, because we need a harder edge on top. if you need a harder edge on the bottom and a softer edge on the top, then maybe you would want to wet the entire area up there. It's just going to depend on what the sky you've got does and what it looks like. So I hope you guys enjoy. Oh, thank you, Michael. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you're off to a good start on the New Year's. And I should mention, I am going to have a workshop coming up. It's a 3-day workshop in Dubuque, July 11th, 12th, and 13th. And when they've got the flyer put together, I'm going to put that on the page to mention that. So that'd be fun so that we can, man, they have the best scenery up there. Wonderful place to paint. And it'd be fun to get out and paint with some of you guys. But everybody, stay safe, stay sane, and enjoy the new year. Bye-bye.